Oubai Shahbandar is here. Oubai, was there any idea, any inkling that this was going to happen?
Well, there's certainly no question this was a bold and immensely consequential decision by President Trump to pull American troops immediately out of northeast Syria. His generals were against it, his national security advisor, his secretary of state, and his special envoy. But we have to remember that this has been something that Trump has been hinting at for quite some time. Remember earlier this year, after he spoke on the phone with President Erdogan, we heard from the White House saying that U.S. forces at some point will be withdrawn. The Pentagon walked that statement back. We heard from National Security Advisor Bolton just last month that the U.S. will remain almost indefinitely in Syria in order to counter Iran. So there were concerns of mission creep. But it's very clear that President Trump has made a promise and he's sticking to that promise. Now we have to look at the political blowback and the geopolitical impact of that decision. A lot of questions on whether or not Daesh has been defeated.
So, big question. You ask it. You need to give us an assessment here, which many people say the president has made a mistake on.
Look, Daesh as an international terror threat has been essentially neutralized. The remnants of Daesh right now are holed up in a small pocket in Deir ez-Zor in the far-flung northeastern Syrian desert. Do they present a threat to the international community anymore? A lot of analysts say no. They've essentially been kneecapped, they've been destroyed, lost a number of their leadership. But terror entities like Daesh are remarkably resilient. They can go underground, they can form secret cells, they can function as a guerrilla group and then re-emerge in a vacuum once that opportunity presents itself. But from President Trump's perspective, does keeping thousands of troops almost indefinitely in Syria really further the mission, given the state of weakness that Daesh and Daesh's ability to present itself as an international terror threat poses to the world today? Clearly, he made that decision despite the advice of his generals.
This brings us to a philosophical point about U.S. foreign policy, okay? Because, of course, we know that the invasion of Iraq, many people say that that was the start of the rise of this entity that created a self-proclaimed caliphate and then proceeded to dominate with an iron fist and terror the people of Iraq. A U.S. assessment, a recent one, says that there are more than 14,000 Daesh fighters in Iraq, and about that number, 14,000 still in Syria. So where does this leave the Americans? You've just indicated that they may not be an international threat anymore, but they're certainly a threat to that part of the world, there in the Middle East. Does America not feel in any way that it has a responsibility to complete the complete destruction of that group?
Well, Syria has become a cauldron for international terror groups like Daesh. And when you look at the numbers, no one really knows how many Daesh fighters are still there, given the remoteness of the battlefield. If we go back for a rewind to 2009, 2010, Daesh's predecessor, Al-Qaeda in Iraq and the Islamic State of Iraq, was essentially wiped out. They were able to reemerge as hundreds, if not thousands, of these fighters, to include their leadership, and al-Baghdadi himself, were released from prisons and detention in Baghdad and from Damascus under really mysterious circumstances, suspicious circumstances. Now, what's going to happen to the 1,000 Daesh fighters that are detained by the YPG militia group, that's the offshoot of the PKK? Are they going to be released? Will they be released under similar suspicious circumstances? What's going to happen to them? That's how Daesh is able to reemerge. So when you look at the numbers, we have to question whether or not Daesh's leadership has truly been neutralized and whether or not they're able to come back. Big questions on whether or not the solution is a semi-permanent American military presence. President Trump has made that decision.
Okay. Oubai, thank you very much indeed. Oubai Shahbandar, our defense analyst.